Hello, hello, hello. I hope we're all well. I hope we are all well. Just seeing that we're live. Bear with a second, people. Hope we are all well on this Bank Holiday Monday. It is Bank Holiday Monday, and it was a pleasure to provide you with the last match day vlog of the season, which is crazy to say, really. Crazy to say, but yeah, it's been a roller coaster of a season for Watford. And in this video, we will be reacting to my season predictions back at the start of the season. It's fair to say those predictions were interesting. We'll put it that way. So lots of ups and downs. It's fair to say those predictions were. Yeah, we have got confirmation that we are live. So thanks for those that are joining in the chat. When you watch this back, or anyone in the live comments, do feel free to drop your comments in the live chat. Let us know what your thoughts on this championship season that just finished on Saturday. What were your predictions at the start of the 2024-25 season? What did you predict well, and what did you have an absolute stinker with? But without further ado, we're going to speed through it and look at how my championship 24-25 predictions back in August. It was August the 8th. I had most clean sheets to be Middlesbrough. Now, of course, the team with the most clean sheets was Burnley, because they were an unbelievable defence in 24-25. So fair play, I got that completely wrong. I thought Middlesbrough would have a great season. I thought Seny Dieng would get the most clean sheets. It was, of course, James Trafford. Most assists, I went for Josh Sargent. That didn't quite go to plan. He wasn't the man for the assists. He was the man for the goals, finishing the fourth highest top scorer. And then for most goals, I actually ended up predicting Mateo Joseph, who didn't really play many games for Leeds in the end. Bit of a stinker, that one. But I had a feeling it would be a Leeds player. So I'll give myself a pat on the back for that. Of course, it was, in fact, well, with still the playoffs to go, we could see some change towards the stats. But I would imagine it will go still to Joel Pirot, who was the top scorer. So, you know what? We had a lot of misses in those sort of top scorer, top assister, clean sheet predictions. But what about the most important thing of all, the table predictions? So the way I'll do it for this is each correct table position is 7 points. And then if you get a correct outcome, you get 3 points. What I mean by correct outcome is if I predicted a team to finish in the bottom three, regardless of which position it was, and they did get relegated, then I'll give myself 3 points for that team, even if the position was wrong. So 7 for the position, 3 for the outcome. Let's have a look and see how we got on. Going firstly, I think we started with the bottom. Let's see what we said.
And I've come to the conclusion that I think it will be none other than... No, I'm not going to put Sunderland in 19th to 21st. Just relax, I'm joking. It will be none other than who is going to come in top spot? I don't know, man. I'm just putting in some of these teams that I think will probably end up there.
Oh dear.
But who ends up in top spot? That is the question. I'm going to say... Oh, sorry, hang on. We got a bit of a technical here.
We had a bit of difficulty.
Are we good?
Technology.
I think we're good. Yeah. We're back. What are we going to say?
So we had Chef Wednesday.
I'm just going to you there.
In the bottom.
There you go. What are we saying then? I think we say probably Leeds United.
Yeah.
Leeds United will top the league.
Get in. He's only gone and done it on the first prediction. It's bang on. 7-pointer from me. Leeds United, the Whites, finishing top and winning the league. And of course, their trophy parade was today. So if you're a Leeds fan, I know there are a few out there in the FPL community, the likes of FPL Stoop Tiger. Fair play. Andy Martin, who we're going to actually have on FPL Tactician on the next Form Temporary podcast ahead of Game Week 38. But massive congratulations to Leeds United, by far the best team of the bunch. And I predicted them to finish top. So I'm very happy with that start to the predictions.
And I'll tell you for why. Because they're going to have a reset. Somerville's gone. Oh dear. Sorry about that, people. What has just happened? Deary me.
Stinker.
Okay. We're back. Sorry about that, people. Yeah. Leeds United, I just think they're going to do it. I just think they're going to come back stronger than ever, and they're going to finish in top spot. Middlesbrough, they had a decent go at it last season. I think they'll get automatic. I think they'll be back in the Prem. The next team that will sneak into the play.
Now, we need to address Middlesbrough. That Middlesbrough is the elephant in the room. So, yeah, not ideal. I don't know what it was. I think Michael Carrick last season did a really good job, and I just got a little bit carried away. But you know what? I wasn't too far off with Middlesbrough, so I had Middlesbrough second. I just thought that, yeah, Michael Carrick was a good manager. He might get them promoted automatically. And I didn't really see Burnley doing too well. Obviously, they'd lost company. So there's a bit of sort of unsurety about which team would go up as the second automatic team. And I just wasn't sure. I mean, Scott Parker's obviously done it before with championship clubs, but I just wasn't sure about Burnley this season. I thought, going down from the Premier League, they'd lose a lot of players. They didn't lose loads. They lost a few, like Amdouni, but they actually managed to keep quite a lot of players, Burnley, from their relegation season. So fair play to Scott Parker, who, finds a way to kind of get promoted in this division. His difficulty, though, has been getting promoted and then staying there with a club. You look at Fulham, you look at Bournemouth. So now with Burnley, I wonder, will he be able to steer Burnley to Premier League safety next season? It's going to be tricky because I still feel they are a team that they don't score enough goals, and that will probably be the issue. Whereas with Leeds, they score a lot of goals in this system under Daniel Farke. I do feel that Burnley might struggle in the Premier League to score those goals just because of the way they play. Now, don't get me wrong, their defensive record is something to really tap into next season, but you can't just go through games and win, games and stay up just by getting 0-0 draws, right? We've seen it with this season, especially with teams like Ipswich trying to sign decent championship defenders and goalkeepers for the Premier League, thinking, okay, let's try and see out some of these games, but also with a look ahead to this following season in case they've gone down. That's what's happened. But I do feel with Burnley, you can't chuck money at it because it's risky. If it goes wrong, your club could be in a pretty unsecure financial position. But equally, if you then try and get sort of players that are more cheap and affordable, are they going to be good enough at Premier League level? So it's a really fine balance. And as we've seen with the 24-25 Premier League season, all three promoted sides going straight back down to the Championship, it's a really tough thing for these Championship promotion teams to stay there. But I think with Burnley, it will be a big, big summer for Scott Parker. But going back to Middlesbrough, I just had a feeling Michael Carrick would do well. And they've had a good season, Middlesbrough, don't get me wrong, but they never really looked convincing team to finish in those playoff spots. So they finished up with an okay season, just sort of outside the playoff picture with 4 points the gap, but 10th in the end. It was a bad end to the season, really, for Middlesbrough, wasn't it? 3 defeats in their last 5 games, and they just didn't ever look that convincing. But they had a decent squad, and at times they had runs in the season where Middlesbrough might have finished higher. So, you know what? With hindsight, this is not ideal, but before the season, I thought this was a reasonable prediction. So Middlesbrough, I think we can count ourselves a little bit unfortunate with that, how that's turned out.
Playoffs, I think, not Bristol City. Instead.
Oh dear. Sorry, Bristol City. I doubted you. I didn't think you would be capable of playoffs. What did I say, though?
I'm going to go for Coventry City.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I can take that on the chin. I might have put Bristol City, outside of the playoffs in 11th to 14th, which is not ideal, but at least I have Coventry, right?
Genuinely think Coventry City are going to finish in 3rd this year because
Now, I did say Coventry to finish 3rd. They didn't finish 3rd in the end. That was, of course, Sheffield United. And I maybe did underestimate Sheffield United a little bit too much, but I just thought the sort of how bad they were in the Premier League last season would really hit them. and hit them hard, a little bit like Luton got hit hard this season in the Championship. I thought that's what would happen to Sheffield United. I didn't think they'd go down, Sheffield United, but I just didn't expect an amazing season from the Sheffield United faithful. But fair enough, Chris Wilder's had a solid season, not enough for automatic, but ultimately I felt that playoffs was likely for Coventry because, you know, Frank Lampard obviously came in this season for Coventry and he's done a really, really good job. Prior to that, there was sort of a bit of discontent and, you know, Mark Robbins, and it didn't quite go to plan. And then he went off to Stoke, and it seems to have a bit of a weird season for Coventry, but they had a really strong end to it. And a lot of players that, you know, they kept with or they brought in did really deliver. Like obviously Gustavo Harmer at this level is a joke, but there's so many players for Coventry. Like, you know, this is the thing with Coventry is I was worried about, you know, obviously 2 seasons ago when they got to the playoff final and lost on penalties to Luton. I thought, well, how much is that going to damage them? You know, that psychologically is a big blow. And can they get back up into the playoff contention? But I did think their squad is so solid that they'd be in around it once again. And they finished 3rd, but they were a little bit lower than that in the end, in 5th. So I actually believe Coventry do have the best chance of winning the playoffs. Now, you might argue Sheffield United or the bookies' favourites, and you might say Bristol City are in probably the best form. But I just think this Coventry side, they've got a lot going for them. And obviously Frank Lampard has come in and just done a really, really good job. And it'd be a nice thing to see Coventry in the Premier League after they were coming so close in that playoff final against Luton. So I think, yeah, Coventry are the team I'd like to see go up. Bristol City as well, because they've never been in the Premier League. But ultimately, fair play, Bristol City. I got you wrong, and I thought you'd be a bit lower than you ended up finishing in that 6th spot. So yeah, fair enough with Coventry. A 5th finish for them and a very good season for Frank Lampard. But let's see what else I said.
Every season I've said they're a decent side. They're a decent side. They've got to get in the playoffs soon. And the year they did get in the playoffs, they got to the final and lost to Luton. So, yeah, I think it's time for them to get in the playoffs. Whether they'll win the playoffs, I don't know. But that's just where I think Coventry City will end up. Next up, Burnley. Now, Burnley, for me, I think they'll be quite disappointed to not get in the automatics. But this is where I think they'll finish. Because obviously Scott Parker's now the manager. They will feel that it's been a bit of a yo-yo period for them. We know this is the case. But I just worry that their team is just starting to lose a bit of momentum. Now, obviously, Company going, you know, he's good at getting teams promoted, it seems, but going to Bayern Munich was not on the likely scenarios. So I don't know with Burnley. I just fear for them that they won't get automatic. But would they take playoffs? Possibly. Now, next up, we're going for this team, and that is Derby County. I'm putting them in there because, look, I think they'd absolutely snap your hand off for a 18th spot.
So I put Derby County in the 15th to 18th range. And where did Derby County finish? 19th. So you know what? I'm going to absolutely take that. Obviously, I ended up having Derby finishing in 18th, which is agonising, really. I was one place off where they ended up being in 19th. But you know what? I don't mind it. I honestly do not mind it. I might have even actually put Stoke in 19th, actually. And obviously it was the other way around. Stoke finished 18th, Derby finished 19th. But, you know, I was in the right ballpark. Very, very close with the way Derby finished. And look, it was a tough season for Derby. Let's not beat around the bush. They really did have a struggle. And until John Eustace came in and really did a great, great job in steering them towards safety, it was looking so bleak for Derby. And yeah, it's fair to say they really struggled this season, but they did enough. And that point on the final day against Stoke was sort of just all they needed, really. And so fair play to John Eustace, really turned things around. So yeah, pretty happy with that prediction. Not quite bang on, but very close to being correct. I'm tempted to give myself 3 points for that, but I think I'll give nothing. It's just so close, but not quite with that prediction. But let's move on.
And I think that's where they're going to finish. So that's where we're going for that. Next up, it is West Bromwich Albion. Now, with West Brom, I think they are going to actually have a really good season. So I'm going to put them in the 7th to 10th bracket, and we'll find.
Now, West Brom is interesting because they could have had a good season, and there was points where they thought they would. So I put them in the 7th to 10th bracket. Obviously, they kind of imploded second half of the season. That they looked like a team that were going to be in the playoffs, and then they just sort of their squad basically caught up with them, and they've got a lack of depth, and they started losing games quite poorly. But they finished 9th in the end. So you know what? When I think about this, I think it's a great prediction because I said 7th to 10th. I did think about maybe playoffs.
Finalize this once all the clubs have gone.
And the worst bit is that right there looks perfect, right? I think if I remember rightly, I end up moving West Brom up the next level into the playoffs. So annoying. My gut there was correct, and I wish I'd stuck to it, but it is what it is, right? There was logic to it, but it didn't quite pay off. And as I said, West Brom they had a little point where you thought, maybe this could be promising, but yeah, they really fell away towards the end, and made some okay signings. Like Armstrong, was a decent signing from West Brom. From Southampton. But their defense let them down really, and to not beat Cardiff was a bit embarrassing against a relegated side. But they did end the season well with a lovely win against Luton, 5-3, scoring lots of goals. So they have goal scorers in the side, but I think their defensive problems have been there for all to see. And West Brom are a decent side, but I just think they're a little bit off the playoffs at this point in time. So yeah, all right, whatever.
I think they're going to be in amongst it this season. Next club we're going for is Cardiff City. I think they'll struggle at points this season. I think it will be a tough season for them. So that's where I'm cutting them at the moment. Next up, QPR.
Okay, well, this is unfortunate because did I foresee Cardiff finishing bottom of the league? Absolutely not. It was an absolute car crash of a season, really, wasn't it? I mean, just problems off the pitch, problems on the pitch. I mean, 9 wins all season is just it's not good enough. It's simply not good enough, really, is it? And I feel for Cardiff because they are a big club, really, and obviously no sort of derby with Swansea for them next season. They'll be in League One with the likes of Lincoln City and the likes of Luton Town. But look, I do feel Cardiff, they shouldn't have got relegated as badly as they did, because when you looked at their squad at the start of the season, it wasn't awful, but they just played very poorly. And yeah, when you win 9 games all season and draw 17 of them, that's not enough wins. That's just simply not enough. So the fact is they actually lost less games in the end than the likes of Derby, the likes of Hull, the likes of Watford, actually, funnily enough. But the problem for them was the lack of wins. That was what killed them. And yeah, too many draws. And ultimately, that was a poor season for Cardiff. So fair enough. I got that one quite wrong in the end. Did not see them in the bottom 3. But yeah, not a good season for the Bluebirds.
PR. We're also going to put them in this spot because, again, I just don't see them shoring up defensively. I think it's going to be.
Okay, so we had QPR in the 19th to 21st spot. Now, with this one, I'm pretty pleased. In the end, obviously, it didn't look great from a prediction standpoint because they end up ending the season quite well, QPR, and finished 15th. But for a lot of the season, they were in a little bit of bother. It has to be said, they were in a little bit of bother, and it only sort of till the second half of the season they started to kind of kick things up. I seem to remember that they beat us at the start of 2025, and that was probably what kicked their season going. Yeah, it's been a nervy season for QPR at times, but you know what? They've done enough, and a bit like with Watford, they've actually had the inverse. Really, they had a bad start, obviously, not getting the points they would want, and then rocky middle, but then in the end they've done enough. And a bit like with Watford, it was fairly comfortable to stay up for QPR in the end. So 15th, yeah, a little bit lower that they finished in my prediction. So fair play, I got that one a little bit wrong, but not far off, in the sort of ballpark kind of. even if it was one category down. So yeah, not the end of the world.
Be another tough season for them. Next up, my club, Watford. Now, I'd love to put us in the playoffs, but do I actually think it's going to happen? No. So I'm going to say 7th to 10th. Now, a lot of Watford fans are worried we're going to be in a relegation battle this season, and I don't actually blame them for that. But I'm just convinced that we should have a strong enough team to finish in and amongst the playoffs. Not quite get the playoffs, but at least it'll be an improvement on our last season finish of 15th, which was a real shame the way we ended the season. Because yes, we won that last day of the season game, at home against Sunderland, but then we lost against Middlesbrough. But yes, the season at the end wasn't a nightmare, but it also wasn't ideal, and we know we can do better. Under Cleverly, if we're going to get promoted at any point soon, we need to build momentum, and we can't simply get promoted this season. If we do, then I would be absolutely crazy, and I'll have a party, and you're all invited. But if we don't, then I think that's more logical and more realistic. So we build momentum going into next 25-26 season. So that's why I'm saying just be solid, have some sort of momentum built under Cleverly, and then we go again. Next team.
You know what? I'm pretty happy with that prediction. I know, obviously, I was a little bit too optimistic in the end. We finished in 14th. 1 place better than in the previous season, 1 point better than in the previous season. And some Watford fans thought we would be closer towards relegation than I did. And I was a little bit too optimistic with my prediction of 8th. But you know what? I'm very pleased with that, because 14th, no, I'm not pleased with 14th, but I am pleased with what I said about our season, because we weren't that far off playoffs for a lot of the season, especially in the first half of the season. Now, admittedly, where the concerns lie for the Hornets going into the 25-26 season is the drop-off in that second half of the season. Watford were in the bottom 3 for the form table post-Boxing Day, which is a real concern. But what Cleverly has done has galvanised the group. He's got the players playing for him. He's got them playing with an identity. And he's also got the fans attached to the football and wanting to go watch Watford play. And that's something that's been a while to happen, to be honest, since, that connection to a manager, not since Xisco Munoz when that promotion season happened, or Javi Grazia in the Premier League. So really, I do think this is a season where we have to look at the achievement, and the achievement is the connection. Now, off the pitch, a lot of progress has been made here this season for Watford with the club, and also defensively there has been issues at times, but the investment of Abankwah and Caleb Wiley in the January window really helped to shore things up, as was the change in goal for Selvik in place of Bachmann. That helped things. The attack is still a problem, though, and that's clear to see. The lack of goals in this Watford side is still a problem. And ultimately, when you kind of put it down to everything, 53 goals in 46 games is not enough for a team that want to potentially be somewhere close to the playoff conversation. It's not enough. You look at the teams that got in the playoffs. I mean, I know that, some teams didn't score that many, like Sunderland got 58 and Bristol City got 59, which is only sort of 5 or 4 off what Watford got in the end. 6 or 5 goals. But in the end, the problem is the defensive side of things, because those teams keep, they concede less than 60 goals, and Watford conceded 61. That's ultimately what it boils down to. And it's also what it boils down to is the number of losses for Watford. I mean, 21 defeats is not good. It's not good across a 46 game campaign. That's, close to half of the losses. And a lot of those losses were away from home. The away form is the problem, but the home form is an encouraging thing for the Hornets, because prior to that game against Cardiff on the last game of 2024, the unbeaten home record was absolutely fantastic. It was better than any other team in any of the top 5 European leagues. So fantastic fortress that Cleverly built in that first half of the season. But the problem was still lack of goals and letting in too many in certain games against teams that Watford shouldn't be losing to. And we saw that sort of increase in the second half of the season with losses to the likes of Portsmouth, losses to the likes of Oxford, losses in the first half of the season to the Luton side that would go on to get relegated. So you just think against the teams that are around them, Watford do quite well. They beat Sunderland, they beat Middlesbrough, they beat West Brom. They put in okay performances against Leeds, but even though they lost that, 4-0 at Vicarage Road, the first half an hour was good. And in the game against Leeds at Ellen Road, they kind of got a goal back, but it was just a bit too little too late. A lot of these Watford performances are encouraging, especially against the teams around them. But ultimately, too many drop points against teams that we should have won against, and just a lack of game management at times. And the lack of a striker has really ruined Watford's season, ultimately, because look, Bio did get our 10 goals and he was our top scorer, but at the same time, that's not enough to have any sort of promotion ambitions. Watford are far away from that at the moment. They're far away from having that conversation about Premier League because the squad is just not there at all. There's a lack of sort of squad depth at the moment, and there still needs to be investment in it. The issue is how you get that money and how you sort of kind of fine tune the details. But what's good this season for Watford has been the youth has done really well. Rocco Vatta's done really well. Quadro Barr's done really well. Matty Pollock's done really well at the back as well. Obviously, the young player of the season, Mamadou Doumbia, come in, when Bio was not really playing well, and you were hoping, a striker would come in January. That no one did, but Doumbia stepped up to the plate, and for an 18-year-old, really did impress. So, yeah, it's been a sort of up and down season, rollercoaster season for Watford, but it's been a progression, I think, with Cleverley, what he's done and how he's had a very few resources to work with a squad that's been very thin to get, in the conversation for a lot of the season about around playoffs. And obviously the drop off at the end of the season is a shame, especially with those, successive losses before the game against Sheffield Wednesday. But yeah, it was an okay season. And as I said in that prediction, go again in 25-26. We don't expect, champagne and promotion next season, but we at least hope for a slightly better season, maybe a sort of 8th, 9th, 10th place finish, sort of building each season eventually towards getting in a position where maybe we could get nearer the playoffs. But look, considering the lack of sort of transfers and resources, a very decent season, I thought, for a Watford side that, maybe going into season, there were some doubters and there were some people thinking in his first full season, would Cleverley struggle and would Watford get drawn into a relegation battle? And really, there wasn't that much of it across the season. Watford were fairly comfortably outside of the bottom three most of the season. So, yeah, I think it's okay. And actually, my prediction of 8th, all right, it's not ideal, 5 places off 14th, but yeah, it's there's logic to it, and maybe I was just a little bit too optimistic in the end.
We're going for it's going to be Millwall. Now, Luton, I'm going to put a bit higher up here. It pains me to say it, but Luton are going to be in the playoff spots. Unfortunately. They are just going to be. Now, with regards to Millwall, I think they're going to have another okay season. They're not going to rip up any trees. But I think, yeah, it will be an okay season for Millwall. Next up, Sheffield United.
So that's interesting. Let's regard the elephant in the room first, which is Luton Town. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to put them playoffs because they'd obviously just got relegation from the Premier League. They had a very good squad for the Championship. Did I think that they would have any sort of pullback or any sort of hangover from their relegation in the Premier League? No, because the squad looked ready for a Championship promotion push. But what followed for Luton was just an absolute mess, really. And as a Watford fan, it of course delights me to say that they'll be in League One next season. But it's really hard to believe that this Luton side, they're a decent quality side in terms of for the Championship, probably good enough to at least finish mid-table most seasons or potentially get near the playoffs. But yet they were so poor in 24-25. And yeah, it's a head scratcher, really, how they managed to do it. But just a very, very bad season. Obviously, Rob Edwards, former Watford manager, of course, when he came down from the Premier League, I think he thought, they can stick to what he's been doing and he can trust in the process. But I think ultimately he didn't change things up enough quickly enough. And Luton just was stubborn in their sort of style of play. They kept playing the same way. They didn't sort of change up the system too much. And that led to them losing games and just keeping, carrying this momentum, this rut of losses, this sort of inner circle, this vicious circle of defeats. And yeah, it's surprising. Back-to-back relegations is not, the most often thing to see. And just it's not a good place right now at this point for those Luton players. So they will have to do a bit of soul searching next season, see if they can find a way to have some sort of a promotion charge in League One. But we'll see. But it was poor season for them. And Matt Bloomfield obviously came in halfway through and didn't really make much of a difference. So it's interesting. But I was well off. I had them I think in 5th, but they ended up finishing in 22nd. So yeah, obviously to go down by goal differences is very tough on those Luton fans. But yeah, ultimately across the season they just weren't good enough to stay up. So the next team in the predictions, as I mentioned, was Sheffield United.
Now, for me, this might be controversial, but I don't think they're going to get playoffs. Now, I talked about all the players that had left quite a lot. And when that happens, I just think it's a massive challenge to string together a team that can build back an identity all of a sudden. Now, don't get me wrong, Sheffield United are a solid side, but are they better than some of those teams I've put higher than them?
Yes.
On current squad, I'm not sure they are. So that's why I've gone for that. Next up.
I mean, it does feel pretty brutal, the swing there, because Sheffield United, still had a good season. They finished 3rd. But I think that in a realistic possibility that they could have actually finished closer to where I said, because there were points in the season where they had some really bad form, and second half of the season they dropped off because it looked like they were going to get automatic at one point. And in the end, they kind of bottled it really with the automatic promotion spot. Burnley were sort of in and around it, but not necessarily always going to get automatics. And Sheffield United just fell away towards the end. But they are going to get playoffs. So fair enough. I got that one wrong. But, I can understand why I went for it but the thing is that a lot of their players they brought in did work. Kiefer Moore was a good addition. And they just had a solid team that would score goals. And fair enough. That was enough to get them a very decent season indeed. Finishing in 3rd, 10 points off Burnley lead. So no sort of real contention in the end for that automatic from Sheffield United, but they were well clear as well of the other promotion hopefuls in the playoff mix. The Sunderlands, the Coventrys, the Blackburns, the Millwalls. So ultimately, it was a good season for Sheffield United, and at the end they lost so many games. 4 of the last 5 that it looked like it was much closer between them and Coventry, and obviously 7 points is fairly close. But in the end, sorry, I'm looking at Sunderland. Ignore me. I'm thinking about, Sunderland obviously ended the season bad. Sheffield United weren't great either. 3 defeats in their last 5. But basically what I'm getting at is they looked like they were going to get automatic. They didn't. They sort of had a bad end. And what I was going to say was they were a cut and above those other playoff teams like your Sunderland, your Coventrys, and your Bristol City. So, yeah, I think it's a tough season for Sheffield United on the respect that they thought they would get automatics. If they don't get playoffs now, Sheffield United, then it will be a real big blow for Chris Wilder. I do fancy the other sides, something about Sheffield United. They might do enough, but I just think Coventry are an exciting side right now. Bristol City the same. Sunderland, the form they've got going into the playoffs is not good at all. So Sheffield United might, fancy their chances if they have to play Sunderland, let's say, in the final. Bristol City won't be easy though for Sheffield United. I think that might be interesting. So we'll see, but we'll see. But yeah, not a great prediction. Basically, is what I'm getting at, because I was pretty much about sort of 7 places off or 8 places off in the end with my Sheffield United prediction. But we move.
We're going to have the next team in there, and that is Hull City. We're putting them in the 11th to 14th spot because every season I say Hull are going to struggle this year, and every season they find a way to not. Now, Philogene a massive loss. I think Tufan is to an extent as well because he did well last season. But I still think, even though the sacking of what's his name,
Rosenia.
Rosenwar is a real weird one. Rosenia, not Rosenwar, Rosenia. I still think this team just has a way to defy the odds. Now, next team.
Yeah, I've had a bit of a stink there, I'll be honest. I didn't think Hull would be in the relegation battle, I'll be honest. They surprised a few people with that. It was a season they just really struggled to get momentum, and they were just losing games at last minute and not seeing out games. And it was just a really tough season for all those involved at Hull. So, you know what? I don't regret that prediction because prior to the season, I didn't think they were any sort of threat of relegation. But yeah, certainly it didn't pan out that way, and they stayed up on the final day. So, I'm glad to see them stay in the league. I think they're a decent little side, and I don't think they deserved to go down when you look at the other three teams that were just a lot worse. But ultimately, it was far too close for comfort for Hull, and they need to be careful now going into next season that it isn't the same thing again. But look, Ruben Sells came in and made the impact just about that they needed. So nervy season for Hull, of course. That's a lot. They put the fans, through the ringer. But I think they are a team that could rebuild maybe next season and have a bit of a better season. But yeah, not a good prediction from me, that one. Let's see what's next.
Norwich City. I think they're going to finish in the playoffs. And the reason I think that is because despite losing Sarah, I just think that Norwich team, they know how to score goals. Last season in the playoffs, it didn't quite work, but I just think they're too strong to not have another strong season. So I'd be surprised if they weren't in around the mix again.
You know what? With this, right? What did I just say about Norwich scoring goals? I wasn't wrong. So Norwich City scored more goals than the likes of automatically promoted Burnley, Sheffield United, Sunderland, Coventry, Bristol City. They scored more goals than all of those sides, and yet they finished 13th. I mean, it's crazy. The problem was they conceded 68 goals. They scored 71. So they conceded far too many to have any sort of realistic looks at a playoff, finish. So, yeah, not ideal, this one. But it's a little bit like my sort of Watford prediction. Obviously, I didn't think we'd finish playoffs, and I thought Norwich would, and it was similar sort of ending points on 57. But look, the defence was the problem, and Norwich, they had a lot of draws. I mean, 15 draws is a lot for a season. I mean, I think it's only bettered by Burnley, Bristol City, and West Brom in terms of draws. Obviously, Preston were on 20, but it's still a lot. It's still a lot of draws, 15. So that was probably their issue, the reason why they didn't finish highly enough. 14 wins. I mean, they had less wins than Watford, but ultimately they drew more games than Watford, and that's why they finished on just about more points. The same points, but just about on goal difference. So it sort of evened out because Watford lost more and Norwich lost less, but they ultimately won less than Watford. So yeah, it's one of those seasons, a weird one for Norwich. Obviously, David Wagner sacks at the end of last season. And, people were wondering, this new guy's come in. Is he going to do the business? Didn't quite get them sort of launched off and what they would want to have done. So, yeah, not the best prediction for me, that one. But we move. Let's see what's up next.
The next team I've gone for is the following. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Bear with. Sunderland. What say we about Sunderland? Well, I think Sunderland FC are going to have a troublesome season. Hence, they are going to be 19th to 21st. They're going to be in 21st spot. And Sunderland fans come at me, but I've just had a feeling that something's building there that's not pleasant. And this could be the season that it rears its ugly head. And I think you'll stay up, but I don't think it'll be easy. Next up.
Okay.
Preston North End
is by far the worst one of the lot. I know I predicted Luton to finish in the playoffs and they got relegated. That's pretty bad. But I actually think this is worse because you can give the excuse with Luton that they got relegated and so they were in a bad rut and that's why they're relegated again. Fair enough. But with this one, this is just a terrible one. This is just a terrible prediction. I mean, look, let's be honest. Sunderland in 23-24 did not rip up any trees. So that was what I was thinking. I was thinking they weren't brilliant. The season prior, of course, they got to the playoffs and they got as far as the semi-final, but, then got knocked out by Luton. But in 23-24, they were nothing special. They really weren't. And I just thought maybe it'll be a season of regression for Sunderland. But, I mean, Reggie Labrie, he was unbelievable. He was genuinely unbelievable. He started obviously with his sort of manager of the month in August, and I was like, wow, fair enough. And yeah, he just kept it all season, Reggie Labrie. I mean, you just got to say fair play. Someone that comes in June, there's pressure to do, have a decent season. Obviously, joining from Lorient, and he just smashed it. He just absolutely smashed it. So fair enough. And obviously now they're going to look at the playoffs and think they've got a good chance of maybe promotion. But those teams around them, I don't know. It's going to be tricky, I think, for Sunderland. I think it is. So yeah, this is a stinker. Along with the Luton one, this is the worst of the lot. I think we said, did we say 21st or I'm not sure what we said. I think we might have even said 21st or 20th or something like that. Yeah, terrible stuff. And they finished fourth. So yeah, it was stinky. It was a stinky one. But you know what? Sorry, Sunderland fans. I apologise, and we have to move on from this.
We're putting them in 14th.
Oh,
the reason we're putting them in 14th is simply every season I look at them and think I'm not that excited by you, Preston. I'm sorry, but you just got to do more for me to excite me and put you.
You know what? This logic, they're not exciting me, was good logic because Preston flirted with relegation. But we put them 14th, which, you know what? It's not terrible. They finished 20th in the end. Obviously, that end up, final day against Bristol City, they got the draw, which was enough in the end. It was enough for them. But ultimately, it was a bad season for Preston. They just really struggled to convert their games into wins. I mean, 10 wins all season was only made worse, in the table than the relegated Cardiff. So, really, Preston, on the amount of wins they got, should have gone down. And they drew 20 games. I mean, that is a lot of games to draw. So, a lack of wins was the problem. But they only lost 16. And, of course, Watford lost 21. QPR lost 18, Portsmouth lost 20, Oxford lost 19. So all the teams around them were actually losing more games than Preston. But what dragged Preston into trouble was their lack of wins and their, the amount of draws they got. So yeah, it was a weird season really for Preston, and not a good season. But ultimately, so many draws just about got them over the line, I guess. But it was a weird one. Obviously, just about 1 point above the drop zone. So. And in the end, it was a good enough season, but there's concern for Preston definitely, going into next season, because I think when they thought, they would have a tough season, but then you think, oh well, Preston, they get to an FA Cup quarter final, surely they can't go down. They had a good cup run, but it just wasn't the same in the league, and yeah, a very bad season for Heckingbottom. So not a good prediction for me at all. This one, 20th spot. I mean, it's all right, six difference, but yeah, could have been better.
You higher up the table. Don't get me wrong, solid side, well managed, but I just don't think they're going to make a push for the playoffs this year. Next up, the next team we've got is Blackburn Rovers. And I think it's going to be another season of frustration for Blackburn, because a lot of the time I look at Blackburn and think they are a decent side, but it never materializes. And I think that's a concern. I think that is a real, real concern. So that's where I'm going to put them. Now, next team.
Well, I don't hate
Oxford United.
I don't hate this. I mean, obviously, it's not ideal. Blackburn were a bit better than this, and I was probably a bit too pessimistic on their chances. Did I think they'd get as close as they did to get playoffs? Probably not. So fair enough, Blackburn. You proved me wrong. Look, it was a bad end to the season because the first half was pretty good. You know, there was points where they're in the playoff places quite comfortably, but then they had that really rocky spell. And obviously there was the whole drama with John Eustace, you know, going to Derby. Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting season for Derby. Obviously, Valerian Ismail comes in, and you're thinking, is he going to really get them into promotion territory? And it didn't go well for a lot of games. You know, Ismail's record was rubbish at Blackburn, and you know, Dennis as a signing really did not have the desired impact. And you know, it was close in the end to playoffs. You know, you just think if they'd won that game up at Sheffield United, if they'd have just won that game, they'd have sneaked in. So look, fair enough to making it a close sort of late surge, and obviously they beat us in their final home game to make sure that was a possibility on the final day. But I think it was just a season of falling short a little bit of those playoffs for Blackburn. But yeah, my prediction is not ideal here, because yeah, I thought they would be closer to a relegation battle than they were playoffs. So yeah, pretty stinky one, this one from me. We move on to the next one.
Now you might think this is just an easy way out, but no, we're not going to put them staying up. Oxford United, I'm afraid you're going to go back down to League One, because it's just too much of a chasm to stay up, in my opinion. Too much of an ask, too fresh of a team in this division. Now, Derby County is staying up, you might ask, and why is that? Well, I think they've actually recruited really well. Oxford United, I think that it would be quite a shock to see them stay up. And
you know what? I feel bad for this one. I really do. Oxford United, I doubted you, but I was not familiar with your game, so fair enough. Look, Oxford United, they haven't played brilliantly this season. Like, don't get me wrong, they've not played brilliantly, but they've just ground out results, and that's impressive. You know what? Their first season up for ages. I didn't expect them to stay up, but they proved the doubters wrong, and they really did. And in the end, you know, final day, they weren't in the picture for potential relegation. They were fairly comfortable. 53 points in the end, 17th spot. Fair play, Oxford United. You doubted by many ahead of the season, but you spoke with your football. So yeah, fair enough. Look, I ended up going for Oxford United there because I just probably didn't know enough about them. That's ultimately my honest truth. So that's probably my bad. You know, I'll take that on the chin. That's my fault. But you know, I didn't think that Cardiff would have the drop off they did, and I thought Sheffield Wednesday would have a bad season. And look, they didn't at all. They had a fairly, you know, close, you know, to playoffs potential season, Sheffield Wednesday, and they just dropped off as well, a little bit like Watford. So in the end, actually, I don't regret that decision. I think Oxford was a logical choice, but fair enough. You defied the odds.
Fair play if they do, but I don't see it personally. Okay. So what does this mean? This means we've got two clubs left, Portsmouth and Plymouth. Now, you might say this is crazy, but I think Portsmouth are going to be this season's wildcard team. Coming up from the League One, and then Plymouth in there at the bottom. So that's my table, and I'm not going to change it. That's simply my table.
You know what? I feel pretty unlucky with this one. I did think Portsmouth would do well. A lot of people might have had them to go down, but I didn't think they would. I thought they would do well, and they did do fairly well for Portsmouth in the end. But obviously, they finished a little bit lower than what I put them. So they finished 16th in the end, but they were fairly comfortable, Portsmouth. from not going down. Obviously, their win against us, sort of mathematically confirmed their safety, but they were fairly comfortable. They had a really good season. Players like Josh Murphy, obviously the brother of Jacob at Newcastle. They just made a lot of very clever signings, Portsmouth. And despite losing 20 games, which is a lot of games to lose, and is potential relegation form, they ended up winning 14 and drawing. And drawing 12, which in the end got them enough points. So like when you sort of get those many points from winning and drawing, even though you've lost 20 games, it kind of balances out. So yeah, fair enough, Portsmouth. That's a good finish for you. And I had them a bit higher in 7th to 10th sort of position, in 10th spot. But you know what? It was a good season. Even if they weren't the wild card team that I was talking about, you could probably give that wild card team sort of tag, I guess, to someone like a Bristol City, who had a really, really good season. I don't think many people expected them to. I mean, Sunderland, going off my predictions, Sunderland were the wild card team, but I think most people had them higher up than I did. So, yeah, no, fair play, Bristol City. They were the team that did really well. And Blackburn did quite well as well. But ultimately, fair enough with that finish, Portsmouth. And then when it comes to Plymouth, they were bottom for a lot of the season, Plymouth. Like, we played them, we drew 0-0 with them. And I thought, Plymouth will still stay bottom. They're not going to move off the bottom. And then Cardiff just decided to be an absolute shambles, really, and basically found themselves bottom quite near the end of the season. Plymouth finishing in 23rd. So I hit the post here. I really have. But with Plymouth, we were very close. So because of the fact they got relegated, I have to give myself 3 points for Plymouth. I had them 24th. They finished 23rd. So yeah, that wraps up the table, I think.
Let me justify why Portsmouth are going to be so good. They are just a fantastic football team. They score goals. They just keep goals out. And I'm just really impressed with their philosophy, their style, and their determination to get the job done. So that's my table. Let me know how wrong or how right you think I will be come May in 2025. So to run it down once again, we've got Leeds winning the title, Middlesbrough in 2nd, automatic promotion. In 3rd, Coventry. In 4th, Burnley. In 5th, Luton Town. And in 6th, Norwich City. And I think I've decided promoted through the playoffs will be Norwich City. Then in 7th, West Brom. In 8th, Watford. In 9th, Sheffield United. In 10th, Portsmouth. 11th, Bristol City. 12th, Millwall. 13th, Hull. 14th, Preston. 15th, Swansea. 16th, Derby. 17th, Cardiff. 18th, Blackburn. 19th, Stoke. 20th, QPR. 21st, Sunderland. Then finally, we've got in 22nd, Sheffield Wednesday. 23rd, Oxford United. 24th, Plymouth Argyle. So those are our championship predictions for the 2024-25 season. But now, what we're going to do is give you my score predictions for match week number 1. It's an all-in-one video. I bet.
Yeah, forget my match week 1 predictions. They didn't do very well in the end. I can actually tell you how I did in match week 1. It was a pretty stinky start to the season, and it kind of carried on with the theme of a pretty stinky table predictions. So on the opening weekend of the championship, I scored 13 points, got 0 correct score lines. I said 2-1 Watford against Millwall. I said 2-0 West Brom against QPR, so they were at least correct goal differences. And then I said 3-1 Middlesbrough against Swansea, and that was it. 13 points was pretty stinky. But yeah, that kind of sums up the season, really. So in terms of the table predictions and how many I got right, I mean, look, Swansea, they finished 11th. They finished a lot higher than I expected them to. So props to you, Swansea. Didn't see that coming. Stoke, we were incredibly unlucky, I thought. Incredibly unlucky. 19th spot for Stoke, and they finished 18th. Like, come on. Like, there's no need for that. And Derby, Derby, we weren't far off either. I mean, we thought they would be in the 15th to 18th. We said 16th, and they finished in 19th. So not the end of the world. Preston was a 6th place difference. Cardiff, we thought would struggle, but we didn't think would go down. And QPR, we thought would struggle, but didn't think would go down. And they did struggle, but they finished higher than what we had of 20th. So Sunderland and Luton are the biggest ones, and Sheffield Wednesday, actually, to be fair, the biggest sort of mares, really. Watford, yeah, a bit optimistic. Leeds, at least we got right. So we got one correct position, which was Leeds. So at least we had something. And then we had 3 points for correctly predicting Plymouth to go down. But other than that, it was much of a muchness. We had a couple of hitting the posts with the Plymouth one and with the Derby, sort of Stoke around those teams. But yeah, really, it wasn't ideal. It wasn't ideal. Not far away from Millwall either. They finished 8th and I said 12th. So Bristol City, we probably should have been a bit more generous too. West Brom didn't feel that far away. Obviously, only 2 spots. So in the end, not terrible. Norwich, we were a bit too over optimistic for. And Luton was a shambles, really, which is a shame. But that is the prediction of reactions. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you're watching back on the replay, then do smash a like on it. Comment your predictions and how they got on in 24 to 25. I'll try at some point, maybe towards the end of May, do the same sort of thing as this, but for the Premier League predictions I did at the start of the season. But yeah, let's gotta hope it was better than it is better than this was, because it was pretty much a shambles, this video, in terms of how well I did. But it's just a bit of banter. We laugh about it in the end. And if it wasn't for Leeds, I'd have, as Ian Beale correctly puts, nothing left. So yeah, that's our predictions. But hope you have enjoyed. See you in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.